learning about the past and doing research was kind of a natural for me. And when I was researching the Jesse James Gang, I was very surprised at how close American and Canadian history were at that time, because you had the Jesse James Gang members in Minnesota, and north of that, you had the Louis Riel Rebellion going on, and all that was happening at the same time, and they weren't really that far away from each other.
We'll talk about this and much more today. Welcome to a Writer's Day podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Writer's Day. I'm so excited to have you here. My name is Ruth Douthit. I'm an award-winning best-selling author of books in various genres, and right now I'm settling on suspense. And coming soon is my Christmas novella. It's a cozy mystery called Murder at Christmas Tree Village, and it's available for pre-order right now. And I think you'll love this story. It's a quirky story about a group of elderly women who must solve a murder that happened right there in the middle of Christmas Tree Village, where their Christmas tree decorating contest happens every year. So they must solve this crime to keep that contest going. So head over to Amazon right now to pre-order your copy of Murder at Christmas Tree Village. And if you like today's episode, please be sure and subscribe over at YouTube, follow me on Spotify, and let me know what you think of today's episode. Okay, on to the good stuff. Her name is Cinda Gault, and she's a new author to me. And she is here today to talk about her life story. She did a stint as a prison guard. Wow, she has an MA degree in criminology and a PhD in English. Amazing. She's a Canadian writer who's here to talk about her fascinating story and love of historical fiction, including a book she wrote in the tumultuous 1970s. So you know the drill. Grab your favorite beverage, a comfortable chair, kick back, and relax as we learn more about Cinda Gault and her books. Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm super excited to have author Cinda Gault with me today. Welcome, Cinda.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Wonderful. Why don't you begin by telling my listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, I can tell you a little bit of a story about how I became a writer. I did not plan to become a writer. I was not on track to being a writer when I was young. I would say I had a fairly tumultuous adolescence, but I still always intended to go to school because I loved school. And so I just followed my interests, which took me to, in the 1970s, being one of those feminists running around setting up rape crisis centers and shelters for victims of domestic violence, which I did with a number of other fellow university students at Guelph, the University of Guelph I went to, and we set up a university club called Women in Crisis, and those were the things we did. And I became the first director, and it was my job to set up the shelter for victims of domestic violence. And that shelter is still going today, all these years later. And once I set that up and I finished that, I decided I had worked with victims for quite a long time, and I wanted to go check out perpetrators. And that's when I went and became a prison guard in a maximum security wing where there were inmates who had been convicted of sexual assault or arson, or just had mental and emotional problems. And I did that for 13 months and then went on to do an MA in criminology, where I did my thesis on domestic violence, and graduated, got my dream job as an executive director of a social service agency, and I hated it. I discovered that I do not like managing people. I don't like it when it's my job to make sure other people are doing their jobs. So I realized I was at a crossroads and I had to figure out what it was I wanted to do. And working for a living was going to be hard one way or the other. So I wanted it to be something that I found so deeply meaningful that whatever I needed to go through was worth it. And that's when I made three big decisions. And one was to become a writer. And to do that, I needed to make some money from it. So I decided I would write a romance, because back then that seemed like a possible thing to do. And so that resulted in a Harlequin, and that is a whole story just in itself. but I also decided I needed to go back to school in my new discipline, which is going to be English. I had been in psychology, social sciences up to that time, and it's a really different kind of writing than in English. And so I went back. I did another MA and caught fire intellectually, and went on to do a PhD. And my thesis for that was analyzing three Canadian women writers who came to publishing prominence in the 1965 to 1980 period. And that's a whole story. And then the third big decision I made was to have my babies. And I had my two kids then. And I had these two huge projects on my shoulders, bringing up kids and going through graduate school. And once that was done, fast forward many years, and my kids were mercifully going off to university, and I graduated. I then was teaching, but I had time to go back to doing writing. And I felt like I wanted to be free at that time, galloping across the plains with the wind in my hair. So I decided I would start researching the Jesse James Gang. And because they rode horses and they could do whatever they wanted. And I thought that's a nice world to live in for a while. And that's when I started kind of pulling on the thread of my first historical novel, which was This Godforsaken Place. And so that was the beginning of the books that I have written since.
Wow, that is quite a story. You do love school.
I
Wow.
do. Yes.
That's what you and I have a lot in common. I was raised in the 70s, so I remember the feminist era, and I think that's wonderful that you did the domestic violence and women in crisis centers. And I worked as a bailiff in the criminal court system, so we kind of have that in common. I
Oh,
didn't
interesting.
study any of
Yeah.
that or deal with the perpetrators, but I dealt with the courtroom. I was in that phase of it, the trials and the hearings and all that.
Well, that would be fascinating too.
It really was. And I love school just like you do. I have 3 degrees as well, so two
Huh.
masters and a undergrad. But I went back late in life, about age 36, and graduated finally by
And what
age
was your
50.
discipline?
Let's see, I did visual arts, my undergrad, because
Okay.
I'm an artist. And
Hmm.
like you, I never really set out to be a writer, but I love the arts.
Yeah.
And then wanted to teach, so I got my master's in education and taught at the college level, and then eventually the middle school level.
Huh.
And now I work at a university in Phoenix, and I do curriculum development there. And we get a free degree if we work there. So I got a free degree and a master's in mental health and wellness with an emphasis in grief and bereavement because I love studying about that.
Uh-huh.
But I also write suspense, so I love criminology. So I love that you are a criminologist too, and you got your MA in criminology.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that you worked in a maximum prison. Wow,
Mhm.
I had no idea they allowed women to be
Well, there
guards.
was a time that they didn't, and I was one
Yeah.
of a group that were coming in as kind of an experiment to see if women would be able to cope with that. So, uh, those were very exciting times to be able to go
Mhm.
into places where no woman had gone before.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would want to. So I admire you. And you were only there for 13 months. Was that because it was stressful or you just wanted to move on?
No, I went there for a reason. I had worked with the victims, and I wanted to go check out the perpetrators, and so it was no longer a mystery to me after I had been there for 13 months, and I knew I wanted to go on in school, and so I went on to do my
Mm.
MA in criminology. So
Okay, so you were just there mostly for like research purposes and to
exactly,
get information. Okay. Did
yeah.
you ever think then to write suspense books since you have that knowledge?
I have never been a suspense reader.
Mm.
I think it's my nervous system can't handle it. There are movies I just can't watch because of the suspense. So I don't think it ever would occur to me to write suspense.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yes, because it's so natural for you.
Yes. When I sat listening to all those criminal trials
Right,
back then, I would jot down notes and things for future stories. It took about 30 years to finally write my first suspense
right.
novel, but now I have all this information. But yeah, so let's talk about that. So you got an English PhD studying these authors, but yet you wanted to write historical. So why that genre?
Well, I'm a Canadianist by training in my PhD. So learning about the past and doing research was kind of a natural for me. And when I was researching the Jesse James Gang, I was very surprised at how close um, American and Canadian history were at that time, because you had the James Gang members in Minnesota, and north of that, you had the Louis Riel rebellion going on, and all that was happening at the same time, and they weren't really that far away from each other. So in that first story, Everything I Hope For, or sorry, This Godforsaken Place, I decided that I wanted to bring in two historical figures that I found really interesting. And one was Gabriel Dumont, and he was Louis Riel's right-hand man general. And I found him an interesting guy because, by all accounts, he was a brilliant tactician. And probably if he had been allowed to do what he wanted to do, that outcome could have been quite different in the rebellion. But Louis Riel kept saying to him, God doesn't want you to do that. And he would stand back and accept that, which I found kind of an interesting contradiction in a military kind of personality. So I knew, and the other one that I wanted to use was Annie Oakley, because she was kind of the Wayne Gretzky of her time, with a rifle instead of a hockey player. She was just so much better than everybody else was in her times. So I knew that I wanted them in it. So I created a fictional character who was a 22-year-old immigrant from England who was at her mother's deathbed, and her mother was expressing regret for not having sort of gone beyond her back gate. And she said, I lived in too small a compass. And that's actually where I got the title for my next book, A Small Compass. Anyway, she came over to Northwestern Ontario with her father to teach, and he fell ill with consumption. And so she was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be stranded here by myself. And the store owner was showing far more interest in her than she wanted. So she was feeling very trapped. And so she bought a rifle and just started practicing out in her rocky back 40. And one day tripped over a wounded Jesse James Gang member. And she was bending over to find out who he was and why he was here. And she got shot at from behind. She wheeled around with a rifle and shot and accidentally killed the Pinkerton cop who was tracking the Jesse James Gang member. So now she had a huge problem on her hands. And that was what would launch her epic journey of the story. And I now had a destination when I found out that Gabrielle Dumont and Annie Oakley were both at the Bill Cody Wild West show in New York at that time. So she went out to Winnipeg, down through Manitoba, into New York, and they all met up, and hijinks ensued, as one says in the biz.
Wow, that is fascinating. And it is neat how our history, blended with Canadian history too. Interesting
Yeah.
characters, though, and I find that a theme of resilience, runs through those characters' life stories and being
Yes.
able to adapt, to
Yeah.
the changing environment, changing culture. Wow, that's really
and
intriguing.
and that continues, and it's interesting to see that in other eras, it's exactly the same thing. You do need to adapt. Things don't stay the same, and you kind of the characters develop as they do adapt.
Now let's go to the 1970s. Tell us about why you wanted to write Everything I Hope For.
Well, I've been writing this story for at least 40 years. And it is probably the most autobiographic in spirit a book as I'll ever write. It's not autobiography. I am not setting it up like that. It's definitely fiction, because I take things and twist them and combine things and do what I need to do for it to be a story, because you can't just write life. It doesn't translate as a story. You need the story structure. So I had too much content and not enough skill as a writer to write this my first time out as a book. So this was my fourth book, and I was able to figure out the structure that I would use to do this kind of story. Now, the times as you know, if you said you were brought up in those times,
Hmm.
they were very tumultuous times
Mm.
and very exciting for women. Uh, in Canada, there was a Divorce Act in 1968, which made it much easier for people to get divorced. And there was apparently a very big pent up desire for divorce because the divorce rate soared, and they did so all through the 1970s. So you had a lot of family upheaval that happened during those times. But at the same time, you had women going into jobs that they were never allowed to go into before, which I experienced. You had women going out to work in droves that hadn't done so before. The kind of the 50s housewife generation was the resentful generation that actually started the second wave women's movement. So there, we were their daughters, and we were going out into the world and finding it a fascinating place. And women went to post-secondary education in droves as well, which they hadn't done before. And you know, the statistics of the proportion between men and women in university college level now is the reverse of what it was back then. Um, and then you had other things. For example, the pill became a widely available sort of tool for women to be able to have control over their own bodies. So there were all kinds of issues at that time that made women be able to have a level of personal autonomy that was really historic. So you probably remember the song, Helen Reddy's song, "I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar." It was
Yes.
very much the theme of the time. So that's kind of the tumultuous setting that is the world that the protagonist steps into as she comes of age. This is the time she falls in love, and of course she chooses the one person who would um, rain all hell down on her, which was the long-haired unemployed hippie.
Yeah.
And so when you have a story like that, it could go in a number of directions that would be kind of expected. One would be kind of a Romeo and Juliet. You had true love interfered with by family members and that sort of thing. And, you know, it just ends up being true love that's denied. And it doesn't go there. Another place it could have gone would be, you know, a young woman goes out into the world, learns her lessons, and comes back home and behaves herself. And it's not that kind of a story either. There was no home to come back to because the home had blown up. And so it doesn't end up going in that direction either. And the third direction that you would expect would be like a naturalist type of story where it's just disaster for everyone and everybody gets creamed by it. And it's not that kind of a story either. It's you watch this protagonist in real time go out into the world and learn how to just figure out how to have a meaningful life as she learns about it. And she takes her lumps, she makes decisions. When she makes bad ones, she takes, you know, the consequences for them. And you watch her kind of learn in real time how she's going to put a life together that's going to be meaningful for her.
Wow. Again, another theme of resilience and adaptation, you know, adapting to these massive changes. That sounds amazing. And you're right. I did grow up at that time. My mom and dad did get divorced in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was shocked by how difficult it was to be out there and how little help she received
Right.
during that time, too. So she had to make it on her own. And yeah, so it was up and down. A lot of good music, though, in the 70s. A lot of good
Well,
music.
you know, it's interesting that you'd say that because each of the chapter titles in the book are all a title of a song
Oh,
from that
I
era.
was going to ask you if you
Yeah,
had
and
anything of
the I don't know if
favorite.
you recognize it, but the title "Everything I Hope For" is from a Joe Cocker song. "You Are So Beautiful."
Oh, yes, yes,
You're
yes. You're
you're
everything
everything I
I
hope
hope
for. You're
for.
everything I need. Yes,
Yes,
that's
I
where it
love
comes
that
from.
song. So, what
Yeah.
are the chapter titles then? What are some of them?
Oh, I know that there's "Bridge Over Troubled Waters."
Oh,
There's "Dear
yes.
Prudence." There's "Take Me Higher." There are some Carole
Beautiful.
King songs.
Ooh, Carole
Um,
King. Yeah.
yeah, you're just going to have to read the book.
Okay, I'm gonna have to. It'll take me back to that time. You know, that was more my sister's generation. She was 8 years older than I
I
was.
see.
But so yeah, she went through all that, the sexual revolution of the 70s, and she
Yeah.
had Carole King's Tapestry,
Yeah.
and the Carpenters' greatest hits. I remember growing up listening to all that music.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
my favorite
Yeah.
decade for music. So yeah, I was wondering. It was definitely a tumultuous time, a lot of change,
Hmm.
a lot of eyes were open. So I could see how you would have this 17-year-old girl trying to find her own way, which was something my sister did. She was 17 during that time too. So that's going to be an interesting read. I like
And
that.
did she
Very
have a
nice.
tumultuous time as well, your
Um,
sister?
because we were 8 years apart, she was more like my mom, more like a second mom to me
I
than
see.
that. So I did see her go through a lot. She was a trailblazer for me, very, very strong, very independent.
Yeah.
She taught me a lot in that regard. My mom was more, raised Roman Catholic. We're a Mexican family, so she was more like bound by some rules, some unspoken rules and
Right.
things. My grandmother, though, my mom's mother, she was the one who was the trailblazer, and she and my sister were very, very close. So,
Huh.
yeah, my sister did go through some difficult times during that time period. She came out very, very strong,
Mm.
found, married in 1983 and such. So, yeah, I did see a lot of it through her eyes and my older brother's eyes. He's 10 years older than me, so he graduated in 75 from high school.
Oh, okay.
So that was their, big generation. For me, I was a kid, was born
Right.
in the summer of love, 67, raised in the 70s, but mostly watched it all through their eyes, my older siblings'
Right.
eyes.
Right.
Didn't really get too much. My father was completely turned off by the Nixon Watergate scandal. So I do remember seeing that on the news, reading that in the papers and such, seeing it on the magazine covers and such. So it was
Right.
such a fascinating time in
It
American history.
was. And well, and I was just going to say, Americans were dealing with the Vietnam War.
Mhm.
We got draft dodgers in Toronto.
Yeah, exactly. That's where they
Oh,
were heading toward. Yeah,
yeah.
Canada. And so when
But
they returned, it was a whole different world.
yeah, and many didn't. I know draft
Yeah,
dodgers that
that's
are
true.
still here and made a whole life and family for
Yeah,
themselves up here.
that's true. Yeah, they did not, many of them did not come back. But
Yeah.
that became a lot of material for fiction authors
Oh, for sure.
was, and movie writers and stuff. What happens when the veteran who left comes back? So there's
Yeah.
so many books and movies
Yeah.
about that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of people who are in their 30s and 20s today just don't have an idea of what it was like with the gas lines, the fuel,
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
stuff, the embargoes, the Iran, the hostage situation. And
Yes.
it was such an interesting time
Yes.
coming out of the tumultuous 60s. In American history, the 60s were like, oh, it was just
Yeah.
such a dark time in American history.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, so then the 70s came out with this massive bang of, explosion, everybody coming out, everybody
Yeah.
trying new things,
Yeah. And
breaking
it,
barriers.
yes, and it was very optimistic, as disruptive as it was.
Hmm.
There was a lot of optimism for women anyway, that you can go out and write your own ticket. You can do what you want and have
Yes.
the kind of life you want. And that was heady stuff, and women were organizing all over the place for expanding their lives.
It's true. And the the idea of I can do it on my own, I don't need a man. I remember my sister was definitely one of those.
Yeah.
But
We had a T-shirt we sold at Women in Crisis called "Woman Without a Man is like a fish without a bicycle."
yes, remember
Yeah,
Gloria Steinem, that was her favorite, her
yeah,
famous saying.
yeah,
But there were consequences, and my sister did get hurt quite a bit. And she realized, she had to move back home a few times and then go back out and try again. And my parents were always, even though they were divorced, they were always very welcoming to her. It was a difficult time between her and my mom because the generational difference there. My
yeah,
mom was not of that type of worldview. So they
yeah.
did clash, but they ended up having a close relationship later on in life. So it was very difficult. My sister did suffer a lot of hurt,
Mm,
emotional, physical hurt during
mm,
those times, like a lot of women did. I think, like you said, there was such optimism, like, yes, I'm going to go out there and
Yeah.
And then they ended up getting hurt and realizing, you know what? It's not all utopia. It's not all
No, but
right.
the ethos of the time that, and
Mhm.
that was the second wave of feminism. The attitude was just get out of my way. I'll take my own risks and I'll take my own lumps, but just get out of my way and don't tell me I can't do things.
Mhm.
And that seems to have shifted in recent years to more of an expectation that society is going to keep women safe or
Mhm.
somehow has that responsibility. We did not look at it that way.
Mm.
It was like, I'll take care of myself. You don't need to take care of me, because there's something about um, exporting that responsibility that almost seems Victorian to me. You know, that it's someone
Mhm.
else's responsibility to keep me safe.
Wow. Yeah.
Where we never thought that way.
I like that. That's true. What you all endured in the 70s ushered in the 80s where I became, an adult woman. And,
Yeah,
Diane Keaton, our famous American actress, just passed away.
uh,
And she did a movie set in the 80s called Baby Boom, where what happened in the 80s was exactly that. Get out of my way, I can succeed. And many women did. They
yeah,
blew the lid off of success and
yeah,
became, extremely successful in acting, directing, writing on Wall Street, writing, all these books and everything, famous authors and such.
yeah,
And so, like you said, that those are the women who benefited from what your generation went through in the 70s. And so the 80s, we started to see a rise of these women. And I think what's interesting in that movie Baby Boom is that she made it. She made it to the top. She's running this powerful company. She can write her own ticket, and she inherits a baby from a cousin who died tragically in a car accident. And now she's feeling that motherly tug in her. And she
right.
starts to realize, I think I just want a quiet life in
Yeah,
Vermont. Just
yeah,
the two of just me and my daughter,
yeah,
and I just want a quiet life. And so there's that full circle. She
yeah,
doesn't want a life that her mother had, but she wants something different than what Wall Street and all that has to offer.
for sure.
That resonated with me anyway.
Yeah, because the thing is, she's choosing a life that is meaningful to her. It's
Hmm.
not as if there's a one size fits all life for everybody.
Yeah.
The word I always say, don't have a baby or do a PhD unless you really, really want this. Because it takes so much. You wouldn't, that's, in my mother's generation. My mother's sounds a lot like your mother as far as the
Hmm.
generation.
Yes.
And the worst thing to do is to have to like grind it out to have a life where you're working so hard at something that you didn't want.
Mm.
When you actually make the choice and you take it on voluntarily, then you can't ask for anything more than that. That's
Yes.
the most marvelous kind of life you could ever live.
That's true. And in that movie, Baby Boom, that's what happened. Mother necessity is the mother of invention, and she needed baby food. So she invented it. It sold, and now she became a millionaire based off of something she
Yeah,
created.
yeah,
And she got the life that she wanted, doing it on her own, in
yeah,
her own way, like you said. And so that came out, I think, in the late 80s. And that really resonated with me, that theme. And that was something that I wanted too for my life.
right.
And I was blessed by God that He gave it to me. Such a vastly different life than my mom's. My mom, like you said, was raised, born in the 30s, raised in the 40s, 50s, got married. I asked her one time, "Why did you get married?" She said, "Because that was the thing we did. We got married."
Exactly.
And she said, "And all I ever wanted was to be a mother." She goes, "My whole life, that's all I ever wanted." And so I thought, wow, we're so vastly different. And same with my
Yeah.
sister. She just could not relate to my mom for that reason. Just totally different worldview.
Yes, and the generations, since then, women have become mothers later in their lives.
Hmm.
My mother had me when she was 24, um, and I had my first baby when I was 32. And
Wow.
you can go out into the world and get to know yourself and sort of take yourself out for a drive and see what you can do by that time. And so by the time I had my babies in my 30s, I wanted everything. I wanted the mom stuff and I wanted the intellectual stuff. And as I was bringing up my kids, I was also doing my PhD, my MA and my PhD. So my brain was on fire at the same time that I was bringing up my kids. And we were all in school together for a very long time. And that's, I can't imagine how much more exciting and satisfying that was, because I didn't want to pick one or the other. I wanted both.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to go out and watch that movie, Baby Boom.
It's wonderful. Diane Keaton. Yeah, we just recently watched it again after we heard that she passed away. One of her best performances. It's wonderful.
Huh.
Well, so what's coming next for you?
Well, I have, I just, within the last couple of weeks, my romance has been republished. And this was my Harlequin super romance that was published in 1988. I received my rights back. They have a program that you can apply to. And so I did that a couple of years ago, and my current publisher said she was interested in republishing it. So I revised it because I had phone booths and landlines and tape recorders and all of this outdated technology. I mean, I didn't have an electronic copy of it because I typed it out on a manual typewriter. So my millennial kids had to introduce me to image to text software so that I could be spared from having to type the whole thing out again. So I had to revise it for technology, and I changed names because names date. But one thing that I was pleased with is that the romance didn't date. So people kind of fall in love the way they always did, which is nice. The trappings might be different, but we're still human beings after all. And I had my current publisher did a new a cover for it because Harlequin owned the cover art for the first edition, and so it's a new one now, and that's out as an ebook. So that's new. And then the next thing that's coming out next year is going to be a children's book. I have two granddaughters, two 2-year-olds, and I had two boys and they each have had a girl, and they were born 3.5 months apart. So I say to them, you guys have one kid each. I've got twins. And so when my older son was a kid, he was afraid of clowns. And so I am doing this children's book, and my publisher is doing the illustration for it. It's called Beat the Clown. And the idea is to confront what you're afraid of, and it diminishes in how scary it is. So that will come out next year. And if I can ever get back to writing fiction, my next book is going to be about being a landlord. Because when I was in my late 50s, I thought my teaching was going to dry up. And so I went out and bought 3 little 2-bedroom houses in Hamilton, which is about an hour's drive from here. And I did all my own renovation, and I became a landlord when I knew nothing about it. And so the challenge for that story is going to be figuring out how I can make all of these little anecdotes that I know about into one cohesive story. And next year, Cinda Gault's going to figure that out.
Well, that'll be interesting. And listeners, head over to cindagault.com to learn more about her. You can buy her books, you can contact her and read reviews, a lot of things, and listen to other podcast interviews and learn more about Cinda Gault. You are one busy lady, so I appreciate you taking time out to chat with us today. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It was lovely meeting you, Ruth.
That was fascinating to listen about Cinda Gault talk about her life story and how she became an author. And I just love that she loves school. I thought I was a freak because I love school. But boy, she went back to school while being a mom too. That's amazing. I hope that you've been encouraged about her tenacity, her resilience to keep going on her writing journey, to keep going on your writing journey. Remember, you have to work hard to overcome those obstacles, and it must be a passion to keep you going, especially if you have little ones at home. It has to be a passion to keep you going. And most of all, I thank you for listening today. Until next time, God bless.